Welcome to Catholic Shrine Basilica YouTube channel.
Saint Lazare Cathedral, Autun, France. Introduction. The Cathedral of Saint Lazarus of Autun, French, Cathédrale Saint-Lazare d'Autun, commonly known as Autun Cathedral, is a Roman Catholic cathedral in Autun and a national monument of France. Famous for its Cluniac inspiration and its Romanesque sculptures by Gislebertus, it is a highlight of Romanesque art in Burgundy. It is the seat of the Bishop of Autun. The Bishop of Autun set forth the construction of Saint Lazare Cathedral as a result of the large movement of pilgrims traveling to Vézelay as they progressed on the pilgrimage route to Santiago de Compostela. Due to social practices that involved pilgrims venerating the relics of saints in this period, the Bishop of Autun ordered the creation of a larger cathedral to house the relics and accommodate the influx of pilgrims into Autun. The column capitals and main facade of the church are embellished with realistic sculptures carved by Gislebertus. The artwork is a means of teaching the masses of Christian ethics with dramatic scenes of heaven and hell. Other features include a rare Tympanum signed by Gislebertus of Autun. The Autun Cathedral is a magnificent display of Romanesque art and architecture. The sculptures created by Gislebertus successfully integrate biblical iconography, relating to the New and Old Testaments with ease and amazing artistic ability. The size and quality of the Tympanum of the Last Judgment and the lintel of the Temptation of Eve are impressive and exquisitely detailed pieces of art. The Autun Cathedral remains on the highest elevation in Autun, France, and is considered a fine example of the French Romanesque. History of Saint Lazare Cathedral, Autun, France. Saint Lazare Cathedral. The first cathedral of Autun was built from the 5th century onwards, later dedicated to Saint Nazarius, Street Nazare, as it held relics of Saints Nazarius and Celsus, and was several times refurbished and enlarged. In about 970 it obtained from Marseille some of the relics of Lazarus of Aix in the belief that they were relics of Lazarus of Bethany, the friend of Jesus. These became an object of pilgrimage and the crowds became too great for the cathedral building. The Bishop of Autun, Etienne de Bage, therefore decided in about 1120 on the construction of a new cathedral as a pilgrimage church and for the better veneration of the relics. The new cathedral was allotted a site to the north of the earlier Cathedral of Saint Nazare, of which some remains may still be seen. Saint Lazare Cathedral. Work on the new Cathedral of Saint Lazarus, Saint Lazare, began in around 1120 and advanced rapidly enough for the building to be consecrated in 1132. It was mostly finished by 1146, when the relics of Lazarus were translated from the old cathedral. The tomb of Lazarus, the shrine of the relics, was constructed in the choir in 1170 to 1180. The narthex or portico was not completed until the very end of the century. Saint Lazare Cathedral stands in the highest and best fortified corner of the town, and through external modifications that have been applied to the building, the appearance has been much altered by the addition of a Gothic tower, a spire and side chapels in the 15th century. The cathedral still contains a highly Romanesque appearance on the interior. In the period 1462 to 1469, Bishop Jean Roland had a new belfry built in replacement of the Romanesque one that was unfortunately destroyed by a bolt of lightning. The inspiration of the new building, both in layout and decoration, was Cluniac. The designs were the work of the Bishop Etienne de Bage, who was particularly influenced by the Cluniac Abbey of Paris-le-Monial. Saint Lazare Cathedral was consecrated in 1132. For a number of years after 1146, the two cathedrals operated in tandem, with Saint Lazare as the summer cathedral, from Easter to All Saints' Day, and Saint Nazare as the winter cathedral. The cathedral was finished in 1146, with the exception of the porch which was added a few years later. Abbé Grivet, writing in his excellent guide to the cathedral, explains that the interior of the building is not Gothic, as there are no cross-diagonal ribs, but Romanesque vaulting as was used at Cluny III. Saint Lazare was eventually confirmed as the one cathedral of Autun in 1195. From 1793 until 1805 it was home to the famous painting Madonna of Chancellor Roland by Jan van Eyck, now in the Musée du Louvre. Architecture of Saint Lazare Cathedral, Autun, France. Interior. The interior has a nave and 2 aisles, divided by massive columns with longitudinal carvings punctuated with beautifully decorated Romanesque capitals. The plan of the cathedral has a narthex of 2 bays topped by 2 towers, followed by a 7-bay nave flanked by side aisles and a transept with the tower surmounting cross. The twin flanking towers date from the 19th century. The nave elevation is composed of 3 levels: grand arcade, triforium, and clerestory, each marked by a cornice. The 3-story elevation of Saint Lazare was made possible by the use of pointed arches for the nave. Each nave bay is separated at the vault by a transverse rib. Each transept projects to the width of 2 nave bays, and the west entrance has a narthex which screens the main portal. The triforium base is decorated with a frieze of rosettes and consists of 3 blind arches. The pointed arch has been debated to be adapted from Islamic art architecture where it had been used for some time. Many of the historiated capitals that adorn the columns within Saint Lazare were carved by Gislebertus that include fine representations of the flight into Egypt and adoration of the Magi. The capitals adorn columns along the nave. 3 Magi Capital. Gislebertus is conceiving the capitals through liturgical drama. This capitals depicts the angel's attempt to wake the 3 sleeping Magi. The angel points to the star in attempt to have the 3 Magi to follow the star. The narrative of the 3 Magi extends along the columns in the nave. Each capital shows great detail and a vivid depiction of the story it is telling. The Flight to Egypt Capital. The Flight into Egypt Capital by Gislebertus is located on the column opposite of the Adoration of the Magi narrative. The Flight into Egypt Capital depicts Mary with a calm demeanor showing us her child as she sits upon the pony. She seems to be floating on the donkey rather than sitting on him, a position similar to the enthroned Madonna and Child. Suicide of Judas Capital. When Judas realizes what he has done to Jesus, he repents. In his horror, he hangs himself, unable to bear betraying his master. The capital shows Judas with an open face shown in a grimace with his tongue out. The capital also depicts demons pulling Judas up and hanging him. Gislebertus actually uses one of the tendrils of the Corinthian capital in an innovative way to demonstrate what was used to hang Judas. The fire hair of the devils represents a reference to hell. Gislebertus displays a strong didactic image within the suicide of Judas Capital. Vices and Virtues Capital. This capital depicts charity defeating greed and patience conquering wrath. Such a carving would remind parishioners that evil intentions must be overcome if purity of heart and life is to prevail. This Romanesque capital would provide a didactic function for pilgrims that were illiterate and unable to read the script. The Vice and Virtues capital contains acanthus leaves on the background with charity and patience stepping upon the vices which are demonic creatures. The Temptation of Eve. Gislebertus' Temptation of Eve, French, La Tentation d'Eve, was originally the lintel of the north door of the cathedral. It is stated that the Temptation of Eve was created around the 1130s at the same time in which the Last Judgment and the narrative capitals were made. This large sculpture is now displayed in the Musée Rollin, Autun, France. The Last Judgment Tympanum. The Last Judgment is believed to have been created around 1130. The tympanum was saved from potential ruin as the canons who were managing the cathedral in the 18th century believed that Gislebertus' work was ugly. They covered it with plaster. The tympanum was rediscovered and released from the plaster in 1837. In 1766, the canons decided that the sculpture was not worth keeping because it was mediocre. They then covered everything in a layer of plaster in order to affix other artwork on top of the tympanum. Not until 1837, when another canon curiously began to chip away at the plaster, was the tympanum discovered. Luckily, it was preserved underneath the plaster with the exception of the head of Christ, which was documented to have been removed so that the plaster could fill the tympanum completely. The north facade of Saint Lazare contains the tympanum 1130 to 1135, signed Gislebertus hoc facit. Gislebertus made this within the portico, which is ranked amongst the masterpieces of Romanesque sculpture in France. However, art historian Linda Seidel challenged this reading, arguing that instead Gislebertus was a patron. The sheer size of the tympanum required that double lintels support it with the middle column to further support the sculpture. The left side of the tympanum displays the rise to the heavenly kingdom, and on the right is a portrayal of the demons in hell with an angel and a devil weighing the souls on a balance. Zodiac signs surround the arch vault with Christ in the center portrayed as a serene figure. Christ is placed in perfect symmetrical position with a balanced composition of elongated figures. Jesus is flanked by his mother, the Virgin Mary, and his apostles cast as penitents and observers of the Last Judgment. St. Peter guards the gate to heaven and looks on as resurrected individuals attempt to squeeze in with the assistance of the angels. Gislebertus successfully integrated the modern view of heaven and hell and created a sculpture that would act as a visual educational device for individuals that were illiterate. Viewing the tympanum would allow pilgrims to know what would happen to them if they were to end up in hell. Two men near the center of the lintel carry bags bearing a cross and a seashell. These are the symbols of pilgrims that traveled from Jerusalem to Santiago de Compostela. The tympanum would have inspired terror in believers that passed beneath it and viewed the detailed high-relief sculpture. The bottom of the tympanum underneath the weighing of the souls has an inscription that states, "May this terror terrify those whom earthly error binds, for the horror of the images here in this manner truly depicts what will be." The tympanum is framed by two archivolts. The inner one has carved foliage while the outer archivolt consists of magnificently detailed medallions representing the 4 seasons, zodiacs, and labors of the months. There have been various attempts to explain the fact that the figures and scenes on the lintel seem to be an unnecessary doubling of some of the figures and scenes from the main relief. It was argued, for example, that the people represented on the lintel await judgment, or that the scene represents the idea of particular judgment, as opposed to general judgment, which is represented on the main relief. Debicki rejects all these interpretations. According to him, the symbolism of the relief consistently reflects the theological views expressed by Honorius Augusto Dunensis in his Elucidarius. Specifically, the doubling is based on the idea that on Judgment Day 2 classes of people will be divided into 4. In Die Juditii Duo Ordine in Quatuor Dividentur, the figures on the lintel represent the 2 general classes of people, the saved and the damned, while the figures on the tympanum represent the 4 particular classes. Meanwhile, Philippe Aries suggests that the 2 scenes in the tympanum represent distinct, and even exclusive conceptions of the resurrection. In the scene on the left, the fate of the dead is determined from the moment of their resurrection, and they move directly either to paradise or to hell, while in the scene on the left, the depicted judicial operations stand between the moment of resurrection and the final judgment. Feast Day. Feast Day, July 29th. July 29th marks the feast day of Saints Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. These 3 are the patron saints of siblings. These siblings teach us an incredibly powerful reminder of faith in times of hardship. Their moving story is all about trusting God, even when things seem impossible. They demonstrate the power and strength that comes from believing in something bigger than ourselves. To honor their feast day, we're sharing their story in 4 simple ways to celebrate. Church opening time. Monday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Thursday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sunday, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Contact info. Address: Piel du Terreau, 71400 Autun, France. Connectivities: Airport, Paris-Orly Airport, or Airport to Saint Lazare Cathedral. Autumn 3 hours 20 minutes, 286.2 kilometers, via A6. Railway: Saint Lazare Railway Station to Saint Lazare Cathedral. Autumn, how many distance? 3 hours 40 minutes, 302.0 kilometers, via A6.
If you wish to know more about Catholic shrine basilicas, Marian shrines and Marian apparitions, Subscribe to our Catholic Shrine Basilica YouTube channel. Like and share with your loved ones. For more churches website www.catholicshrinebasilica.com.